Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lindsay Panola with Pacific Gas and Electric Company. We appreciate you joining us tonight for this public safety power shutoff customer briefing. Tonight, we are expecting to initiate a power shutoff, and we have several experts here who are going to give us the latest information and brief you on the situation as it stands right now. We're going to begin with a weather briefing from our Chief Meteorologist, Scott Strunfeld, followed by an operational update from Mark Quinlan. He's our incident commander for this event. And then we're also going to hear about customer communications and support programs for our customers from Aaron Johnson, who is a vice president with our Community Wildfire Safety Program. Now, we also want to let you know before we start, we do have several reporters who are listening in. We will be going to them after our initial briefing and giving them an opportunity to ask several questions. Other media who may be listening in, we want to let you know that we expect to rotate access to media on a daily basis and try to give everyone an opportunity to be able to ask questions. So reporters on the phone, a reminder again, when it's time to ask questions, please press *1 to get into the queue to ask your question. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Scott Strunfeld. He is our chief meteorologist to give us a weather update. Scott.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, so like she said, I'm Scott. I'm one of the meteorologists closely tracking this event. I'm here to provide you with a quick summary of the upcoming fire weather concerns we have. As most of us know, we did have a major heat wave unfold over the weekend, which is continuing today. We saw many historic temperature records shatter during this heat wave, and unfortunately the continued hot and dry weather is going to continue to dry out vegetation across California and make that vegetation even more susceptible to new ignitions and large fires. And so there is also a strong weather system now dropping south through Idaho, and it's expected to pass just east of California tonight through Wednesday and set the stage for Diablo and Santa Ana winds to develop across California. The Diablo wind event is expected to start near midnight tonight and continue through Wednesday morning in some areas. The main focus areas of the winds that we're tracking are expected to be in the southern Cascades, the northern and central Sierra Nevada, and then some peaks and ridges in the Bay Area, primarily focused in the North Bay. And other locations around the territory and the elevated terrain will be quite breezy as well. We are also expecting strong winds in the elevated terrain in southern Kern County as the Santa Ana wind sets up and develops across southern California. And unfortunately, this wind event's occurring on the heels of the current heat wave and will produce critical fire potential conditions due to that combination of those strong winds, the very low relative humidity is expected with the winds, and the dry vegetation I spoke of earlier. In order to prepare for this event, the meteorology team within PG&E utilizes the best available global weather models, high-resolution models that are available out there, as well as our in-house high-resolution weather model that is capable of 2-kilometer and sub-kilometer model resolution. And one notable trend that I'd like to mention is that all the weather models that we're tracking as we head closer and closer to this event have trended stronger over the past 24 hours. And as we know, PSPS events are highly dependent on the weather, particularly wind speeds and other forecast information we use for this event. So for the past week, we have been collaborating with other meteorologists across the state of California, notably the National Weather Service and other federal forecast agencies on the upcoming period of risk to verify that this is a risk period to be concerned with. And essentially all forecast agencies that we talk to are aligned that this will be a significant event. The National Weather Service has issued red flag warnings for most of Northern California that are going to begin to go into effect this evening. They also indicate peak wind gusts with this event could be near 50 miles per hour in many areas in that kind of Sierra footprint I mentioned, as well as elevated peaks and ridges, North Bay and elsewhere. But some local areas could see higher gusts than that. That's quite possible in an event like this. And then other federal forecast agencies that we talk to, such as the Northern and Southern Geographic Area Coordination Center and the NOAA Storm Prediction Center, are also forecasting a high-risk event tonight through Wednesday morning. So there is an alignment across agencies that this is a high-risk event. I want to touch on a few areas where we've made some improvements this year over last year. The first is that we partnered with some external experts to develop a new high-resolution model that provides more than twice the spatial resolution this year compared to last year. And so we're using that data to better pinpoint where the winds are going to materialize. And then we also use cloud computing resources to not only run, but then post-process that weather data because it is quite massive in size. And we process the several weather models that I mentioned earlier in that cloud environment. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is that we've also installed 246 weather stations in high-risk areas so far this year. And so that brings our total network up to 846 weather stations that we have. And that helps us monitor the wind event in real time and provide that critical intel of when it's safe to begin that restoration process. And we'll be tracking that closely 24/7 throughout this event. And so all that information, that weather station information, is publicly available as well, and so you can find it online. And so with that, I'd like to conclude the weather briefing and turn it back over to you, Lindsay.
All right, thanks very much, Scott. So just to recap, we have a red flag warning, we have extremely dry fuel on the ground, and we have Diablo winds coming in. So this is a very high risk event that you've described for us.
That's correct. And as you can see on the slide, red flag warnings posted for most of California with this event.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, let's get an operational briefing now from our incident commander, Mark Quinlan.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Mark Quinlan, and I'm the incident commander for this public safety power shutoff event. I'm here to provide an operational briefing based on the weather intelligence that Scott just covered with the team. So I'll begin by stating that we activated our emergency operations center before the weekend in anticipation for this weather threat. Scott covered all of the attributes about the weather and just how dangerous the conditions are. Once the EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center, activates, we pivot and immediately move into attempting to understand the overall impact to customers. We do that by using the weather data that the meteorology team provides to the operational groups, and we attempt to the best of our ability to define the scope of the event. The slide that we're looking at right now, the highlighted portions of our service territory, represent what we believe to be the highest areas of fire danger beginning right around midnight tonight into tomorrow morning. You can see they're grouped into 3 general clusters. The majority of the risk on the PG&E service territory is in the northern part of our service territory. There's a very small area noted by the number 3 on the bottom of the slide. That's Kern County. But the majority of the impact is really in the Sierra foothills, including all the counties and the tribal areas that you can see listed on the slide. If you look at how these groups are all put together, roughly 172,000 customers are in scope for a public safety power shutoff. And we don't take that decision lightly. We understand the impact on our customers and our communities. We've been working very hard all year, learning from last year's PSPS events and making improvements. Scott mentioned a few on the weather front. We've made some operational improvements as well. And we believe that these 3 areas of scope are at very high risk for fire conditions, and as such, we intend to execute the public safety power shutoffs in this area. With respect to when we believe these events are going to start, they all vary slightly, and they're really tied to the weather. Weather conditions, as you know, can change. What we do in our current operational posture is constantly monitor the weather, and we change our operational posture with the weather as it changes. But as of this briefing, we believe that the majority of the shutoffs need to occur just prior to midnight for the majority of the areas. You'll see area 1 that's listed here on the slide actually begins a little earlier than that. And that's all based on when the unsafe weather conditions are anticipated to be in the area. And we need to start our shutoff execution earlier than that to ensure that when the unsafe conditions are present, our system is shut off and it's in a safe posture. That's the whole intent of the program. You can see Area 1 starting at about 9 p.m. this evening, and we anticipate restoration of everything after we monitor and determine that the weather conditions are safe. We anticipate having everyone on by end of day on Wednesday, September 9th. Area 2, a little bit later start, midnight. Again, estimated restoration time, end of day Wednesday. And then for Kern County, the event starts a little later, as you can see. It's part of that Santa Ana wind event that's occurring in the southern area of the service territory. So as such, the customers in Kern County, the shutoff time will begin a little later, and we still believe we'll have everybody back restored by the time stated, end of day on Wednesday. So if we transition to the next slide, we talk a little bit about things that we're doing to mitigate the impacts of public safety power shutoffs. I want to start in the upper right-hand side of the slide. So 200 grid sectionalizing devices are in use right now to make those geographic footprints as small as they can be. We look at the weather risk. We attempt to do everything that we can in our power to reduce that scope to just the area of risk so that we're not interrupting and turning people off that exist outside of that danger zone. So those are all in play this evening. 5 microgrids and substations have been utilized to provide temporary generation and islanding capability. If you look at those microgrids, these are areas that are set up to protect Main Street. The local city or town may be surrounded by extreme fire danger, but the actual main point of commerce, gas stations, stores, resources, we've configured microgrids to be able to keep those areas energized while we shut off the infrastructure that traverses through the dangerous terrain. That equates to roughly 69,000 customers who have avoided an interruption off of the 172,000. An easier way to think about this would be if we did not have that capability, the 172,000 customers would be in the 200,000 range and up. And to conclude the slide, bottom right is really about the resources that we're going to leverage when it's time to start restoring. As mentioned, we go into a posture where we constantly monitor the weather, and when we see conditions become safe, we declare the weather all clear. And at that time, we begin our patrols and our restoration activity. It's very important that we patrol that infrastructure to verify that it's safe, it's up in the air, and it's in the clear, free of ignition risk. So we do that by performing patrols, and we have 59 helicopters, 60 helicopters, and 1 fixed wing airplane that we intend to use to do those air patrols. That's how we're going to deliver restoration by end of day on Wednesday. So with that, Lindsay, that concludes my operational update, and I'll turn it back to you.
Mark, thanks very much. Just to recap, we expect to start de-energizing customers between 9 and midnight tonight. We expect full restoration of power to all of our customers by Wednesday at 7 p.m. And we're going to be using temporary generation, microgrids, sectionalizing devices to try to make this event smaller for our customers. And with that, let's go to Aaron Johnson to talk a little bit about how we're notifying our customers and how we're supporting our customers. Aaron?
Thank you, Lindsay. Good evening, everyone. I'll be providing an update on customer resources for this public safety power shutoff event. First, I want to acknowledge the many different issues that we're dealing with as a state. Extreme heat, a number of wildfires taking place, air quality for many has remained quite poor and unhealthy for the past several weeks. And of course, all of this is coming on top of dealing with COVID-19 and the many challenges that come with that. And now we are having to make the difficult decision to shut off power to protect public safety. We know that PSPS is an important wildfire safety tool, but losing power is disruptive for everyone and can cause significant hardship, especially in the current environment. Given all of these challenges, we have been working very hard this year to reduce the impact from PSPS events on customers and to provide more services to help them weather a particular public safety power shutoff event. I'd like to briefly cover 4 topics: customer notifications, website and call center status, community resource centers, and support for communities with medical needs. So first, notifications. Our goal, whenever the weather forecast will allow, is to send customer notifications 48 hours ahead, 24 hours ahead, and just before a PSPS event. Notifications come through text messages, emails, and automated phone calls. This year, our notifications provide more specific information based on customer feedback, including estimated times that the power will be shut off and turned back on, plus links to additional resources. Initial notifications for this possible PSPS event started going to customers late afternoon on Saturday, approximately 2 days before the shutoff. I will note we did experience a technical issue that caused a delay for some customers to receive their initial notifications. We have identified and resolved the issue and can confirm that all initially impacted customers have been notified. In addition, increasing severity of forecast weather conditions overnight Sunday and into this morning added new customers to the scope. The vast majority of those customers, over 90%, received notifications this morning. However, due to the emerging weather conditions today, 4,900 customers have not yet been notified, including 320 medical baseline customers. Those notifications are in process right now. Turning next to our website and call centers. On our website, customers are able to access an address lookup tool to see if their location continues to be in a potentially impacted area, as well as outage maps that new this year are tied to county-level parcel data. We have not experienced significant issues with the website for this event, and we've built additional capacity to handle surges in use. We have both an emergency and our regular PG&E.com. PG&E.com, as of this afternoon, in 1 hour we looked at, had received just under 1.5 million hits within the hour. It is built to hold 12 million. Our emergency site that operates in parallel with that during events is capable of taking 240 million hits an hour and had received about 600,000. So we are operating well below the built-out capacity for our improved website. The website is now also multilingual, provides translated preparation material in 13 languages, and for the actual event-specific information, that information is in 6 languages in addition to English to help communities better understand what might be to come. Our call center has been staffed at increasing levels to handle higher call volume. And finally, I want to encourage customers to visit our Safety Action Center at safetyactioncenter.pge.com for access to information about what customers can do to keep their family, their home, and their business safe during a PSPS event. Next, I'll cover community resource centers. I want to give you a bit of an overview of where we are establishing community resource centers. Beginning tomorrow at 8 a.m., we are planning to mobilize 47 community resource centers across 17 counties and in 1 tribal region. Those updates were added to our website this afternoon, and customers can find the specific locations and details about the services provided at pge.com/PSPS updates. And that is one of the best websites for really getting all the latest outage maps and CRC locations, among other services. Operating hours will be expanded this year for the community resource centers, again, based on customer feedback, and those will operate from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. We do have 1 of those sites in Santa Rosa that we just settled on with local emergency management this afternoon, and that site will not be operational until noon. Those details are, however, available on the website. The community resource centers are significantly improved this year in location, availability, and services. These were developed in collaboration with local leadership and emergency management. CRCs will provide basic power needs, such as charging medical equipment and electronic devices, up-to-date information about the event, and things like water, snacks, and other essential items to reduce hardships for customers. Obviously, with COVID this year, we are taking that very seriously, and all of our community resource centers will reflect appropriate health considerations and follow state and county guidelines, including requiring facial covering and social physical distancing requirements, visitor limits at a single site, temperature checks before entry, and regular cleaning and sanitizing of all surfaces. We ask specifically that customers not come to a community resource center if you are sick with a fever, cough, sore throat, or runny nose. Finally, support for communities with medical needs. We know that turning off power has even more of an impact on those who rely on power for medical equipment. We are providing more help this year to customers with disabilities, hardships, language barriers, and other needs. For the customers who are on PG&E's medical baseline program, we have extra precautions in place. For this event, there are over 10,000 customers who are part of the medical baseline program and are potentially impacted. As of about an hour ago, we had notified over 90% of those customers. They had affirmatively responded to us that they were aware of the impending event. We continue to send messages that those who haven't responded and have been out sending our field personnel to knock on doors if we do not receive a phone response or an acknowledgement to the email or text. We are also partnering with community-based organizations, and we have helped provide some funding to a number of organizations this year to provide enhanced services to those, especially with medical needs. Primarily, we have an active partnership with the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, and that organization is designed to conduct outreach and provide resources for the disabled and aging populations. We have a lot of information, again, available on our website for any customers that have a need, and the CFILC is stood up in a number of local jurisdictions and ready to support customers. More information can be found at pge.com/disability and aging, or you may visit the CFILC website at www.cfilc.org. In closing, I'd just like to acknowledge that there are many potential safety risks associated with losing power. We have heard that feedback loud and clear from our customers. We encourage everyone to have a plan for staying safe during this severe weather event, and know that we are going to be doing everything we can to get the power turned back on as quickly as possible once the weather is safe to do so. With that, I will turn it back to you, Lindsay.
All right, thanks very much, Aaron. And just to confirm, we have 47 CRCs that will be stood up in 17 counties, and they will be taking COVID precautions there, and those locations will all be available on our website, pge.com/PSPS updates.
That's correct, Lindsay.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. So before we go to the reporters who are on the line waiting to ask questions, I want to remind the reporters to ask a question. You do need to press *1 to get into the queue. In addition to the presenters who you've heard from already, we also have Vanessa Bryan. She's with our customer team. She's also available to answer customer-related questions. So I'd like to start and remind the reporters again, you have up to 2 questions. If you have more than 1 question, please ask them both off the top, and then we'll direct them to the appropriate responder. So we're going to start with Dale Kessler. He's with the Sacramento Bee. Dale.
First off, I think this question is for Mark. In fact, I think both of these questions are for Mark. Will you be turning off any transmission lines this time around? Last year you didn't. After the Kincaid fire, I remember Bill Johnson saying, well, maybe we will start doing that, and we'll evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. Second question has to do with the time it takes to restore. I know you've invested heavily in new helicopters, more personnel to try and speed up the process, yet almost 2 days still seems like a long time. It doesn't seem like much of an improvement over what we saw last fall? Thank you.
Mark,
Dale, yeah, just want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Yes, thanks.
Dale, thanks for your questions. So the first question was in regard to, are we turning off transmission lines? The answer to that is yes. We're turning off right around 100 transmission lines. We're turning off also about 145 distribution lines. The number of lines is really dependent on the scope of the event and where that unsafe weather is. And we look at the fuel conditions and the wind conditions, and we have thresholds set such that if we exceed guidance on the threshold, that's when the equipment comes into scope. So we do intend to de-energize transmission in addition to distribution. And the way we need to do that is a very orderly, sequential manner so that we can do that safely and not jeopardize the overall larger grid in our service territory and with respect to the interconnection. Second question around restoration. We've committed to restoring 98% or more of our customers, regardless of the size of the event, within 12 daylight hours of the weather all clear. So if you think about that, a lot of these areas, which we highlighted on the previous slide, they all have different start and stop times. And the stop time is really about what time do we believe the weather is going to improve to the point to where we could actually begin our restoration. Our commitment is to restore what the 98% or essentially all of our customers within those 12 daylight hours. So if you look at the areas that are in play for this event and we monitor the weather conditions, right now our forecasts are indicating that the majority of these areas are safe to begin the restoration process Wednesday morning on the 9th. Now, if we have an opportunity to begin earlier because weather conditions improve earlier in one of these areas, that's exactly what we're going to do. But right now, the way that the weather, the period of unsafe weather from unsafe start to all clear, that really defines, our wait time. We do some work in the interim to get ready to restore. We do some switching and we put our system in the appropriate posture to do it safely and efficiently. But once we get that all clear from the meteorology team, we immediately begin patrols and restoration. So that time Wednesday end of day is really driven by the length of the wind period. If things shorten up, we will shorten up. Hope that answers your question.
So Mark, just to confirm, we don't expect the weather to be clear until Wednesday morning, and then we expect to have customers fully restored, or 98% of them, by the end of that same day.
Exactly correct, Lindsay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dale. Now we're going to turn to Action News Now. We have Esteban Reynoso on the phone. And Esteban, same thing. If you have two questions, please ask them.
Will do. Thank you, Lindsay. So my first question is more or less aimed at, I want to say Mark. So a lot of these customers, you said that they had a little over or a little under 2 days notice. I cover the Paradise area, and a lot of them don't really have any places to kind of gather that information. They don't have internet. It's a little bit difficult for them. They rely on the AC. So do you think that it was notified in a good enough time to where these customers can find new avenues to get power, whether that be a generator, whether that be going elsewhere to get a hotel or to moving somewhere else? That's my first question, if the 2-day notification was enough. And my second question is a general question, which is what determines the threat of a fire versus the threat of losing power to these customers? Like I said, a lot of them in the Paradise area, they don't have a lot of AC. They're living in their trailers. What determines the threat of a fire versus the threat of almost 4,000 people losing power in the Paradise area? Thank you.
So Reynoso, if we could, I think I'd like to start with your second question, Mark, and have you respond to the question about the risk. And then I think the second question on the 2-day notice is probably a question for you, Aaron. So Mark?
Thank you for the question. So if I understand the question correctly, the threat of fire, the safety implications associated with that versus the threat of safety issues introduced by power outages. We're absolutely sensitive to that. That's why we put so much energy into the analytics, the studies of the fuel conditions and the wind conditions, and really identify those thresholds, which we believe our facilities are at supreme risk for fires. And as such, we make that decision as the last resort option. We take every opportunity we can to reduce the footprint, to reduce the scope. Covered a couple ways we did that during my portion of the presentation, to the point to where we could avoid nearly 70,000 customers from experiencing those interruptions. But having said that, we are sensitive to the fact that there will be a large number of customers that receive a power outage as a result of this. So what we do in that posture is communicate as aggressively as we can and as transparently as we can as the weather conditions change. Aaron will get to that part of the first part of your question. But we do set up resources for customers like the community resource centers so that customers who do rely on, they need the air conditioning, they need to recharge devices, they need power. Our intent was to provide as many community resource centers as we can, working with the counties to allow folks to know where to go to get some assistance. Back to you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Mark. Aaron, can you address the question about the notification process and maybe talk a little bit about the concern from the reporter up in Chico and the Paradise area where people are still rebuilding? I know you have spent much time up there yourself, Aaron, so can you talk a little bit about how we're doing our customer notifications and outreach?
Sure. Thank you for the question, and that area of very great importance to me as I am the officer with responsibility for that rebuild effort there. So I'm very familiar with the challenges that the community is experiencing as it gets back on its feet and we and folks are rebuilding. So it's a great question, and it's really a challenge to thread the needle on what is the appropriate notification to give customers. And what we're trying to balance really is not over notifying that this might happen, but also giving people enough time to prepare a plan as you described. And where we've really settled on is about 48 hours notice. That's where we have, reasonable confidence. It's not definitive in terms of what the scope will be, but that's really the point where we can begin to have a pretty healthy sense of what the footprint of a possible public safety power shutoff event is. If we went much further out, we would have a lot of false positives, we think, or much larger geographic areas. We do let our the first responder partners, our emergency management partners across counties, tribes, and the state, we do try and notify them at about 72 hours out, 3 days out before an event. And then also we have a website at PG&E.com, and I guess I'm the website person tonight, but the PG&E.com /weather, where we do provide a 7-day outlook for whether there might be something on the horizon that we are watching. We did go to that about a day before. We got about a 3 days heads up on this event, and so that did go to elevated, which is when we begin watching for event on Friday. So there is a website there that customers can monitor, and additionally they can sign up for notifications on that website as well if they want to get that in their email box every day. So we're trying to give as much notice as we can while also balancing that with not overly alarming customers about the possibility of an event too far in advance when we don't have great clarity about what the actual footprint will look like. I hope that answers your question. Back to you, Lindsay.
And Aaron, we also have an address lookup tool on our website as well that I think customers can utilize, correct?
That is correct, Lindsay. An address lookup tool and a very granular map this year. We were using an approximate map that had sort of a general geographic area, and we know that was very frustrating to customers last year when they couldn't zoom in on their home. We've gone through painstaking detail to match our customer data with county parcel data this year, and so those maps are highly granular now, and you can zoom in and do it either via the map or just look up your address on the address lookup tool this year.
Okay, thanks very much, Aaron. And thank you, Reynoso. We're now going to go to KCRA TV and Mike Lurie. Mike, you have a couple of questions for us this evening? Mike, are you on? Okay, we may have lost Mike. Let's go to the San Francisco Chronicle and Joaquin Palomino. Do you have several questions for us, Joaquin? Looks like we've lost him as well. How about J.R. Stone with KGO? J.R., are you on the phone?
I am. A couple questions. I'm in the Santa Rosa area, and I'm curious, first of all, what the weather conditions for this system look like in comparison to 2017 when the Tubbs fire came through here with very heavy winds. That's question number one. How do these conditions compare to that? And question number two is, what type of guarantees do you have for customers that, one, we won't see any fires when the electricity is turned back on, and two, we won't have to wait till Thursday, Friday, or Saturday to get the electricity back on?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, JR. Let's start with our meteorologist, Scott Strenfeld, who can talk to us a little bit. Scott, the question was, what type of weather conditions are we seeing, and are they similar or different in any way to the 2017 North Bay fires? He's particularly concerned about the North Bay where he is right now.
Sure, yeah, thanks for the question. Overall, this event is looking a little bit weaker than what we saw in October of 2017. In the elevated terrain of the North Bay, we could see peak gusts, in general, 40 to 50 miles per hour, but I wouldn't be surprised if our weather station on Mount St. Helena or others over elevated peaks and ridges were, 60 plus in this event. However, this event doesn't have quite as much what we call as meteorologists upper level support with it, so we don't anticipate it being as strong, but it's at a level of serious concern for us, because if we have these critically dry fuels, which we know are out there, and 40-mile-per-hour winds and an ignition, you could get a very fast propagating wildfire. So quite not 2017 levels, but still very concerning for us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Scott. Mark, do you want to address the question, the other question that the reporter had regarding the timeline again? I think you've covered it, but he may have jumped on late, so maybe you can talk again about restoration and how we expect to have it much shorter this time.
Yeah, JR, I appreciate the question with respect to our patrol process and our restoration process. So the first thing I want to say is, that the Napa and Sonoma and Lake County area is about 23,000 customers out of the entire event scope that's specific to those counties in the general vicinity to where you're calling from. And we'll begin the de-energization process this evening and into the early morning hours. And then right now we're forecasting that the all clear process, or the times in which the conditions will become safe to patrol and restore, are right around the daybreak on Wednesday. So when that happens, the first thing that we do, even before we get the all clear, once we de-energize, we're going to actually segment our system and break up each one of these circuits into small sections. The reason we do that is it enables us to set the system up so that it can be patrolled very quickly and safely. It's very, very important for us to patrol and put eyes on our equipment. Our field employees that are out there immediately go into that mode to where they're sectionalizing the system, and then we wait for the weather to improve. When the weather improves, we are pre-staged several hours before the time we anticipate that weather to improve, just in case it comes in early, we're ready to execute. Once we get the weather all clear, the operations section within the Emergency Operations Center provides that approval to our control centers. They work with our crews that are out in near the infrastructure, and we begin patrolling and restoring as we go. So we do not ever take a chance and not patrol something. We put eyes on all the equipment that's in scope before we restore. And we don't do this incrementally from the very source or the start of the circuit to the end of the circuit. That's one of the reasons why we segment the circuit into several pieces, because we have patrollers that are stationed at each segment. So when we begin that process, all of those segments are being patrolled at the same time. If we find any hazards or find any damage, we clear that equipment and ensure we remove the hazards. So we ensure that it's safe to energize before doing so. So based on the event scope specifically for that area of the county, or those counties, I should say, we have a high degree of confidence that we'll be able to keep this in by end of day Wednesday. Back to you, Lindsay.
All right, thanks, Mark. Thanks for the question, JR. We're going to go now to our final questioner. It's the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and it's Michelle Chavez. Do you have questions, Michelle?
I do. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, excellent. So my first question has to do with a map that was shown at the beginning of this presentation. It listed Sonoma County and Napa County in both groups 1 and 2. And I know those two have different start times for when the shut-off will begin. So my question is, can you clarify for Sonoma and Napa counties, will we be seeing some areas in those counties begin to shut off earlier in the night and then some closer to midnight, and how confident you are about those estimates? And then my second question is about the community resource centers, I believe you're calling them, specifically the one in Santa Rosa, what the capacity looks like and why that's starting a little bit later. I think you said me.
Okay. Mark, can you take the first question? She's asking about the difference in start times on the map regarding both Sonoma and Napa counties. Can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe we can get the map back up on the screen.
I can. Michelle, thank you very much for the question. I have very specific information that I could provide about the two counties that you asked about, Napa and Sonoma County. So if you look at this map, you see where the number 2 is. There's also other areas, we'll call them geographic areas of scope that are highlighted in the blue. So all of those are kind of similar in nature with respect to when we're going to shut off and when we anticipate restoration. These are further subdivided, and we do that deliberately in the EOC to give us the flexibility to restore faster or start faster or even delay restoration if we're not seeing the weather come in as forecast. But I want to get specifically to Sonoma Napa. So that's in an area of roughly 23,000 customers. We intend to begin the de-energization for those specific counties right around 3 in the morning tomorrow morning. And we're doing that because we believe that the unsafe winds will be in place right at about daybreak at about 6 a.m. So it takes us a little bit of time to make sure that we can switch the system off and make sure that it's safe before those winds get here. Right now, we're anticipating that the winds will become safe at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, or I'm sorry, at 6 in the morning on Wednesday, the 9th. So per JR's question, when we get that all clear, that's when we're going to begin patrols and restoration, and we have a high degree of confidence that we could do that by the end of the day. Now, with respect to the confidence factor overall, right now, as of this briefing, based on the weather information that the meteorology team has provided, we feel very comfortable with this. But I will say this, we are always monitoring the weather, and we will change with the weather. So if we have an opportunity to delay restoration because the winds are not materializing, we'll take that delay. If we have an opportunity to start the patrol and restoration process sooner than what's forecasted, we will do that. The whole intent is to try to minimize the overall duration of the power outage. We understand our employees are impacted by this too, our friends and neighbors and some of us as well. We understand the impacts of power outages. That's why we want to make them as short as possible in the interest of public safety. So with that, Lindsay, back to you.
And Mark, just one clarification. I think at one point you said delaying restoration, you meant we'll delay de-energization based on the weather if we can. Is that right?
Thank you for that check. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Aaron, I think the other question was about the CRCs in that same area, in the Santa Rosa area. What's the capacity like? What are the hours like? If you're still with us, Aaron Johnson. And if not, we'll go to Vanessa. Do we have either Aaron or Vanessa? Might be on mute.
Yeah, Lindsay, this is Vanessa. I apologize. I do not have the details on the exact capacity. What I can tell you is that we have a variety of different solutions. We have both inside solutions for customers, CRCs, as well as outside open air tents. The outside open air tents allow us to serve more customers and maintain safety from a COVID-19 perspective. We can certainly get back to the reporter in regards to the delay for Santa Rosa. As I understand it, it was solidifying the exact location. And we do work really closely with our counties to make sure that the locations are appropriate based on what their resident needs are.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. Okay, and that is our final question from our final reporter. So with that, I'd like to thank Scott, Mark, Aaron, Vanessa, and the reporters who joined us with their live questions during this update. I'd also like to encourage all of our customers to go to pge.com/PSPS updates for more information. You'll be able to see information as the weather is changing. Again, we also have videos on our decision-making process and all the work that we've been doing over the last 12 to 18 months to try to make these events smarter for our customers, shorter in duration, and smaller in size. So we encourage you to take a look at those videos. And again, go to pge.com/PSPS updates for more information and updates as this event develops. As we said, we're expecting the de-energization process to begin this evening, sometime between 9 and midnight. And we do plan to have all of our customers restored once we get the weather all clear, hopefully by end of day on Wednesday. So with that, thank you for joining us. Please be safe.